What if I told you that in the summer of 2006, a grand jury sat in a room in Palm Beach County, Florida, tasked with deciding whether a man accused of sexually abusing dozens of underage girls would face serious felony charges? And what if I told you that the prosecutor who presented the case to that grand jury, the man whose job it was to fight for those victims, presented the case in such a way that the grand jury returned only a single charge? Not sexual battery, not lewd and lascivious molestation of a child, not any of the charges that the police had recommended. One count of solicitation of prostitution, a charge that didn't even acknowledge the victims were children. Pause. That prosecutor's name was Barry Krischer. He was the elected state attorney for Palm Beach County. And what he did, and what he didn't do, in that grand jury room may represent one of the most consequential failures in the history of American prosecution. Pause. Stay till the end, because the decision made in that grand jury room in 2006 set off a chain of events that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to remain free for 13 more years. I'm Mark Epstein, and this is the Epstein Files. Pause. To understand what happened inside that grand jury room, you have to understand what came before it. Pause. In March 2005, the Palm Beach Police Department opened an investigation into Jeffrey Edward Epstein following a complaint by a woman who reported that her 14-year-old stepdaughter had been brought to Epstein's residence at 358 El Brillo Way, Palm Beach, Florida, and paid to perform a massage that escalated into sexual contact. The case was assigned to Detective Joseph Recarey, a veteran investigator with the Palm Beach Police Department. Source: Palm Beach PD Incident Report, March 2005, Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 1, November 2018. Over the following 11 months, Detective Recarey conducted one of the most thorough local investigations in Palm Beach County history. He identified and interviewed dozens of victims. The probable cause affidavit he authored documented approximately 40 victims, most of them minors at the time of the alleged offenses. The victims described a consistent pattern. They were recruited, brought to 358 El Brillo Way, led to rooms with massage tables, creating a pyramid of exploitation that funneled teenagers into the mansion. Source: Palm Beach PD, Probable Cause Affidavit 2006, Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Parts 1-2. On October 20, 2005, Detective Recarey executed a search warrant on the El Brillo Way property. Evidence was recovered from the home consistent with the victims' accounts. Source: Palm Beach PD Records, Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 1. Recarey compiled his findings into a detailed probable cause affidavit. He recommended that Jeffrey Epstein be charged with multiple felonies, including 4 counts of unlawful sexual activity with a minor and 1 count of lewd and lascivious molestation. These were serious charges under Florida law, charges that reflected the gravity of what dozens of girls had described. Source: Palm Beach PD, Probable Cause Affidavit 2006, Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 2. The affidavit was presented to the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office. The elected state attorney was Barry Krischer, who had served in that position since 1993. Source: Palm Beach County Election Records, Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 2. But here's where it gets disturbing. By the time Detective Recarey's investigation was complete, Jeffrey Epstein had assembled one of the most formidable legal defense teams money could buy. His attorneys included some of the most high-profile lawyers in the United States. Among them were Alan Dershowitz, the Harvard Law School professor and renowned appellate attorney; Roy Black, one of Miami's most prominent criminal defense lawyers; Jack Goldberger, a veteran Palm Beach defense attorney; and Gerald Lefcourt, a prominent New York criminal defense lawyer. According to later court filings and reporting, the team also included Kenneth Starr, the former independent counsel who had led the investigation into President Bill Clinton, and Jay Lefkowitz, a former special envoy and Washington attorney. Source: Case 08-80736 CIV Filings, Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice. Part 2, later NPA-related filings referencing defense team composition. This was not a typical defense team for a Palm Beach criminal case. This was a legal army. And according to reporting by Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald, this team engaged in an aggressive campaign to discredit the investigation and the victims. Source: Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 2. According to Brown's investigation, Epstein's defense team hired private investigators who conducted extensive background research on the victims. Teenage girls, many from disadvantaged backgrounds. The defense assembled dossiers on the victims that highlighted their social media posts, school disciplinary records, and any prior encounters with law enforcement. The goal, according to the Herald's reporting, was to portray the victims as unreliable, as troubled teenagers whose accounts could not be trusted. Source: Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 2. And this pressure campaign did not target only the victims. According to the same reporting, Epstein's attorneys communicated directly with the State Attorney's office, presenting these dossiers and making the case that the investigation was flawed and the accusers were not credible. Source: Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 2. Against this backdrop, State Attorney Barry Krischer made a decision that would define his legacy. Rather than filing felony charges based on Detective Recarey's probable cause affidavit, an affidavit supported by the testimony of dozens of victims and corroborated by physical evidence, Krischer's office chose to present the case to a grand jury. Pause. Now, a grand jury presentation is not unusual in serious criminal cases, but how you present a case to a grand jury matters enormously. Pause. The prosecutor controls what evidence the grand jury sees. The prosecutor decides which witnesses testify. The prosecutor frames the charges. In a grand jury proceeding, there is no defense attorney in the room. There is no judge presiding over the evidence. It is the prosecutor's show, entirely. Pause. Now, if you're still here, it means you can handle the truth. So let me show you what they didn't want you to see. Pause. In mid-2006, the grand jury convened in Palm Beach County. What happened inside that room is, by law, secret. Grand jury proceedings in Florida are confidential, but the outcome is public record, and the outcome tells you everything you need to know. Pause. The grand jury returned a single indictment against Jeffrey Epstein. One count of solicitation of prostitution, a second-degree misdemeanor under Florida law at the time. Source: Palm Beach County Court Records, 2006, Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 2. Not sexual battery, not lewd and lascivious acts upon a child, not any of the felony charges that Detective Recarey's investigation supported. Pause. A single count of solicitation of prostitution. Pause. Consider the language of that charge for a moment. Solicitation of prostitution. The charge, by its very framing, implies a transaction between adults, a buyer, and a willing seller of sexual services. It does not acknowledge that the victims were children. It does not reflect the power imbalance between a billionaire and 14-year-old girls from working-class families. It recasts victims of child sexual abuse as prostitutes. Pause. According to the Miami Herald's investigation, the Palm Beach Police Department was stunned by the grand jury's result. Detective Recarey and Police Chief Michael Reiter believed the case had been deliberately undercharged. Source: Miami Herald, Perversion of Justice, Part 2. I'm Mark Epstein, and I'll see you in the next file. Next file, page by page. I read every single one. Verified sources: PACER, DOJ, FBI Vault, FAA Registry, Property Records, and the Miami Herald Perversion of Justice series. Every claim is cross-referenced. Source bibliography includes Case 08-80736 CIV, Document Cloud Archives, and investigative reporting by the Herald. stay alert, stay informed, jai hind. Chief Writer took an extraordinary step. He wrote a formal letter to State Attorney Barry Krischer, expressing the department's concern about the handling of the case and requesting that Krischer recuse himself from the prosecution. This is a nearly unprecedented action. A local police chief formally challenging the state attorney's handling of a case. When that request did not produce a change in course, Chief Writer took an even more unusual step. He referred the case directly to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, bypassing the state attorney entirely. The FBI opened a federal investigation. Agents corroborated what Recarey had found. They identified a similar number of victims and confirmed the pattern of abuse. The case was taken up by the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida. Assistant United States Attorney A. Marie Villafaña led the federal prosecution effort. Her office prepared what has been described as a 53-page federal indictment, a document that detailed charges serious enough to put Jeffrey Epstein in federal prison for the rest of his life. This is where the official story falls apart. That federal indictment was never filed. Instead, in September 2007, negotiations began between Epstein's defense team and the United States Attorney's Office. These negotiations were led on the government's side by United States Attorney R. Alexander Acosta. The result, finalized in June 2008, was the Non-Prosecution Agreement, the NPA, one of the most controversial plea deals in American legal history. Under the NPA, Epstein would plead guilty to 2 Florida state charges, 1 count of solicitation of prostitution and 1 count of procurement of minors for prostitution. He would serve 18 months in the Palm Beach County Stockade and register as a sex offender. In exchange, the federal government would halt its investigation and grant immunity not only to Epstein, but to any named and unnamed co-conspirators. The NPA was negotiated and executed without the knowledge or consent of the victims, in direct violation of the Crime Victims' Rights Act. This violation was formally established on February 21, 2019, when Judge Kenneth A. Mara of the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida ruled in case number 08-800-736 CIV, Jane Doe number 1 and Jane Doe number 2 v. United States of America, that the federal government had violated the victims' rights under the CVRA. But trace it all back, and you arrive at the same inflection point. The grand jury of 2006. That was the moment where the system first broke. If Barry Krischer's office had presented the full weight of Detective Recarey's investigation to that grand jury, if the grand jury had been shown the scope of what 40 victims had described, the physical evidence recovered from the search warrant, the pattern of recruitment and abuse, the trajectory of this entire case could have been different. There would have been no need for Chief Writer's letter, no need for an FBI referral, no need for a federal investigation that was itself compromised by the NPA. Jeffrey Epstein could have faced serious felony charges in Florida State Court in 2006, charges that carried sentences measured in decades, not months. Instead, the grand jury saw what the prosecutor chose to show them, and they returned what the prosecutor's framing allowed them to return. In November 2020, the Department of Justice's Office of Professional Responsibility released its long-awaited report on the handling of the Epstein case. The report focused primarily on Alexander Acosta's role in the NPA negotiations and concluded that Acosta had exercised this poor judgment but did not commit professional misconduct. The report did not substantively address Barry Krischer's grand jury presentation. Barry Krischer left office in January 2009 after choosing not to seek re-election. He was succeeded by Michael McAuliffe. Krischer has maintained that his office handled the case appropriately. But here is what remains unanswered. Why did the state attorney's office present the case to the grand jury in a manner that resulted in a single misdemeanor charge, when the police department's investigation supported multiple felonies? What specific evidence was shown to the grand jury and what was withheld? How many of the approximately 40 victims were called to testify before the grand jury? Were the grand jurors informed of the full scope of the investigation? These questions cannot be fully answered because grand jury proceedings in Florida are sealed. But the gap between what Detective Recarey documented And what the grand jury returned is not a mystery. It is a chasm. And the only person who controlled the bridge across that chasm was the state attorney. As we explored in episode 17, Detective Joseph Recarey fought for years to see justice done. He died on May 25, 2018, at the age of 50 before the case was ever fully reckoned with. The grand jury of 2006 was the first point of failure. The place where a case built on the testimony of dozens of children was reduced to a charge that treated those children as willing participants in their own exploitation. Every episode of this series follows the paper trail, and the paper trail of the 2006 grand jury leads to one inescapable conclusion. The system did not fail by accident. It failed by design. At every level where a decision-maker had the power to act and chose not to, the powerful bury the truth. But paper has a longer memory than power. If this episode opened your eyes, hit subscribe and the bell icon, because every file matters. Comment below. Should sealed grand jury records in this case be open to the public? I read every single one. Share this before it disappears from your feed. Next file, the non-prosecution agreement, line by line, clause by clause, the legal architecture of impunity. When you see what was written into that document and who it protected, you will understand why this story is far from over. I'm Mark Epstein, and I'll see you in the next file.